This is the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and on each episode, I'm going to help you get savvy to allow you and your business to grow. We'll be focusing on the 3 elements that lead to business success: your mindset, your processes, and your skills. Hello, and I think I'm on mute. Just a second. No, I'm not. Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm Mark Terrell, and today I have a guest joining me to talk about trust. Really important topic with regards to leadership. Actually, probably more than just leadership. It's actually an essential part of being a human being, isn't it? Trusting others. Putting trust in others and accepting it is really important. So really looking forward to that. And we have been joined by Claire. Thank you, Claire, for joining us. Really like enjoy your input. If you've got any comments to make about trust, be great. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today. So I have, if I can just introduce you to Jane Rennie from the Extraordinary Training Company. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Mark. Lovely to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, as we had a sort of prelim talk about, leadership stuff, and you came up with, I want to talk about trust. It's something that's really important to me, and I think it is. It's an essential, isn't it? If we are in a leadership position, it's about giving trust and accepting it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if anything, this whole period, this pandemic period, has really brought trust to the forefront. I think for a lot of business owners, a lot of organisations, and a lot of teams, as we're working more remotely, and people are needing to trust us to get on with our jobs. Likewise, we need to trust that the organisation has our backs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really important point. That working from home thing, which I'm sure we'll cover when we get to that topic. But as those that listen to this or have tuned in before to the show know that what we do now is we explore the motivators of my guests. So this is the motivational bit, and Jane's top 3 motivators are on the screen. You can see that she's motivated by the searcher, which is making a difference. The spirit, which is freedom, autonomy, and the expert, being a specialist and a master of a subject. So first of all, the question I ask is, how do these 3 things show up in what you do, Jane?
It's a really interesting one. I remember when you very first sent these to me. I think probably, very like lots of people, your first thought is, that's not me. There's got to be something. But actually, the more I think about it, the more I've obviously spent some time talking to you and thinking about and reading about my report. I think they're absolutely spot on. As a coach, as a trainer, as a facilitator, I've always wanted to make that difference. It's always been incredibly important that I have a real connection with what I do. And for many years, I've said, as cliche as it sounds, that the day that I get up in the morning and say, "Oh God, I've got to go to work today," will be the day that I quit, because you cannot do the job that I do. And be totally transparent without being that person that wants to make a difference. So in terms of that, that search motivation, I think that's absolutely right. Likewise, I think with the spirit as well, I've always been incredibly independent. I've spent my life living all over the world, 27 different countries throughout my life. I've sort of literally been dragged up in all sorts of far-flung parts of the world, and I think from a very early age, I've had to be quite independent. I've had to just sort of dig in and get on with it, and I think that's through into my adult life, certainly into my career as well. And I love owning my own business. I love being able to have the freedom to make those decisions. And likewise, the expert is an interesting one, because I think, we all like to think we're experts in our own field, don't we? I've been really fortunate to have a really solid background. I spent many years before having my own business working for Franklin Covey. And most people know Franklin Covey from sort of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or indeed the Secret of Trust, which is where my connection and my real sort of insightfulness in terms of trust as a leadership competency really came about. And so I've had a really good grounding. I've been very fortunate to work with some really amazing people. So as I said, the more I've gone through my report, having spoken to you, the more it just makes perfect sense.
It certainly sounds like all those 3 top motivators are being fulfilled in what you do. Claire has made a comment about your 27 countries you've been to. She's a bit amazed that you've been to 27 countries. That is a lot of countries.
Yes, yeah. Father in the oil industry, which obviously helped in childhood, and then I suppose I just had a bit of a taste for it, and so I've carried on, dragged my kids around the world as well. So,
yes.
Yes.
And I just go back to the search of the top motivator. I think what we underestimate in a lot of people is that yes, we want to make a difference, but actually being connected to the outcome, understanding that how we make a difference and getting that feedback is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think it was probably one of the reasons why I branched out into coaching about 10 years ago. I'd always loved being a facilitator, being a trainer, but that coaching piece really allowed me to see that end-to-end process. So, seeing somebody through the entire journey, and as you say, being able to connect with the outcome, really important.
Yeah, just a question there. I've got from Claire. Did you meet Covey and what was he like?
I did, yeah. So Dr. Stephen Covey, I was really fortunate. He actually taught me the 7 Habits initially, and he was an amazing man. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2012, but he has definitely left an indelible legacy on me. And it's probably one of the reasons that I've still stayed connected and still do quite a lot of associate work for them now. But yes, a truly amazing man.
Awesome, yes. Brilliant, fantastic. Right, let's get on with the main part of the show then, talking about trust and how important it is. So, why trust? Where do we want to kick off with this?
I think it's always a really interesting one. I think for a long time, when you broach the subject of trust to people, I think the natural assumption is that it's this sort of fluffy, nice to have sort of soft skill. Whereas I think the more that you truly understand that trust is a measurable, really hard-edged, critical leadership skill that thankfully is learnable, I think the more that you get under that and you start to see the pervasiveness of trust, I think you understand more just how important it is. I mean, there are so many different leadership skills. There's lots of we could sit here and list a whole range of them. And yes, there are lots and lots of skills that are hugely important. But I think your ability to create, to extend, and to sustain trust as a leader is absolutely critical. Absolutely. And I think certainly in my experience, it's the centerpiece. It's almost that foundational piece that enables all of those other leadership skills to really happen. It's got to be at the core, at the centre. As I say, thankfully, it is a learning skill.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you have to build up, and you can lose in an instant. That's the thing, isn't it? That's the sort of scary thing, but it's something to be aware of all the time. Is realizing that you can lose trust by just doing one thing, and also, how you're going to rebuild it from that point. How do you sort of address
Yeah.
that when you talk about trust with the work you do?
It's a really interesting question. I think it's important to note and to say quite candidly that not every relationship, not every situation where trust is lost is salvageable. I think it very much depends. It depends, first of all, on the relationship. I think it depends on the willingness of both parties to build those bridges and to mend it. Um, and I think it also depends on the nature of the loss. So depending on how that trust has been lost, that will make an enormous difference into, as to the outcome of whether or not you're going to be able to rebuild it or not. Um, Trust once lost is incredibly difficult to rebuild. It doesn't take very much to lose it, and it's also, I think sometimes it's also about understanding another person's currency, if that makes sense. So there will be things that are particularly important to you, that may in a relationship be less important to me. But if I fall down or fail you in one of those areas, then that can have a huge impact. So I think part of building trust and extending and learning it as a skill, a lot of it is centered around understanding someone else's language and what is important in that relationship.
And obviously, trust is a two-way thing, isn't it? Obviously, we can give trust, but I suppose we're looking for it to come back, don't we? And seeing some sort of feeling that trust has actually been accepted, and then we then have to see that trust has come back to us in some way. And that's the interesting thing, is it's like a two-way sort of thing that's sort of carrying on all the time, isn't it? It's like a two-way thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before we even get to the stage where we are sort of extending trust ourselves, we've also got to ask ourselves, how trustworthy am I? Am I? What makes me trustworthy? What are the kind of characteristics? What are the kind of qualities that I have that would make people want to trust me? And I think sometimes we're very quick to expect others to trust us without really giving them any grounds, in which to do so.
Yeah, so at the moment, we are having to work from home, a lot of us, and obviously that brings up some trust issues, doesn't it? And when people are not in sight of us, how do you like help people with that trust issue when they can't actually see people working in the office, like beside them, or that sort of line of sight thing?
Yeah, do you know this whole period of working from home during this pandemic, I think has thrown up the question of trust so many times. Um, I think there have been some really great examples of businesses, organizations, large and small, who started at the beginning of this year with a very fixed mindset about the capability of their teams, their ability to be able to work assisted, unaided, at home. And I think for a lot of organisations, or a lot of leaders particularly, they've had a really, really big wake-up call. You've looked at some of the evidence that's come out of the CIPD, for example, some very quick studies that have been done that are showing that on average, people working from home are working about 7 hours per week, than would if they were back in the office. And so I think any concern that leaders have had previously about trusting people to actually get up and get on with their jobs while they're out of sight, I think has been blown into the water. Um, And I think likewise, businesses who start at the beginning of the pandemic thinking there's no way that my business model would support me, there's just, there are too many issues at stake here. I think they've also had a significant change of heart as well.
It's an interesting one. And we mentioned talking about your motivators, that spirit motivator. A lot of senior management will probably have a high spirit motivation, and they like sort of giving freedom to others. But actually, that freedom, when it's given to others, is very much linked to trust, isn't it? Because once you have it, you want to keep it. So then, by showing that actually I'm doing something that is the right thing to do, rather than abusing this sort of trust that's been given to me because of the freedom, that's very much linked to it, isn't it? I hadn't really thought of it before that.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about something called smart trust, and smart trust is just simply, there are two factors. The first is the willingness, or what we refer to as a propensity to trust. So, are you willing to at least try to look for and seek out ways in which you can have a trusting relationship? The other side of that willingness is a little bit of risk analysis. So, with smart trust, we're not saying, just go out and, just, with great abundance and trust everyone, because the chances are, you're probably going to get bitten or burned. Smart trust is a whole different thing, because what we're saying is, if you've got the willingness to extend trust, if you also do a little bit of risk in terms of what's at stake here, what's at stake if it goes wrong, what's at stake in the outcome of the task, the relationship, whatever, you can then make an informed choice about whether or not you're willing and you are going to then extend trust and have trust back at you. And by using that sort of analysis, it's actually, people always, when I say to them, it's okay if at the end of that process you choose not to trust someone. There's a very, very big difference between that, just saying, no, not going to trust anyone at all. I'm just going to distrust, be suspicious of everybody I meet. There's a huge difference when we are willing to look for ways to trust people. Mm-hmm. We weigh that up with what's at stake, what's at risk, and then we make an informed choice.
So it's like a conscious decision, isn't it, that we have to make? Am I going to trust that person or not? And what did they do last time I trusted them in some way? Did that trust come back to me? Was it a good decision? And so that's that sort of to and froing sort of thing. Yeah. Absolutely. I mentioned before we come on there about sort of stories with regards to this stuff, because it really sort of lights it up, and that's the feedback I've had, is that when you put something in a scenario about, a story that's actually happened, that's when it really comes home. So have you got some stories around sort of trust that you've had with clients?
Yeah, so a client that I've been working with, quite a big client based up here in Edinburgh, who I've been working with for a number of years. They operate call centres, and so their business model has always revolved around people being on site, present in the office. And I think probably had I asked them, or had we been having a conversation about moving people into a working from home situation, even just a year ago, I know without doubt that the response would be, no, absolutely not. Business model doesn't support that. We could never have people online at home, etc., etc. Pandemic hits, and all of a sudden, they are thrown into this scenario whereby either they just stop functioning as a business, or they extend trust to their employees and take a chance that they're doing the right thing. And it's turned out that not only was it a huge success, people were much more giving, they were much more productive, they liked the fact that they were being trusted to get on, flexible working arrangements and working beautifully. such that they've now said that they will only ever go back to a 60% on-site business model, and 40% will be around flexible working from home. Now that's a massive leap forward for a large organisation. The same has been for small businesses, smaller organisations, smaller clients that I work with, who again have extended trust. They've said to people, look, I don't mind what hours you work when you're at home, as long as the work gets in, as long as we're checking in. And they found again that their team have been much more productive. They've liked the flexibility, particularly during the height of the pandemic, where children were needing to homeschool. So they like the fact that they were trusted to not check in and clock in every morning. As long as, once a week they all got together as a team, just talked about what they were doing, where they were going, etc. And so two, opposite ends of the scale in terms of size of business. But again, it's come down to leadership and trust in leadership. Trusting team members to get the job done, but likewise, team members trusting that organisations have got their back. That the processes are at work, everything is still, functioning as normal, just in a very, very different working model.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting going forward to see what happens. And like you say, that 60-40 split with time, that's probably not going to be that untypical. I think that's going to be what people are going to expect going forward, because it's been proven it works now, and as long as that trust is there, in other words, so you're given trust to work from home, hopefully this will encourage more businesses to actually reward and recognise on productivity and results rather than the time they spend in the office. That's the important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a really, really big part of trust is intent. And I think one of the key areas that I see leaders falling foul is just not being intentional enough, not being upfront about where they're going, what they're trying to achieve, what their expectations are. It's a little bit like, if we use the analogy of driving a car. Cars have got indicators, unless you get in Bangkok, and then it's just a suggestion. But typically, you don't need the indicators to drive your car, but everybody else around you does. Pedestrians, other road users, they need those indicators to know where you're going, what your intentions are. And trust is exactly the same. If you're not intentional, if you don't trust your people enough to say, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go, then typically, as I said, that's normally where I see leaders falling foul.
Yeah, I'm going to nick that indicator thing. That's brilliant. I love that. But because it is that when you are, leading, you having to show the way. It's important to, make sure that people do know which way you're going, so that they can actually go along and they know what part they play in the overall scheme of things.
Absolutely, and then it comes back to that choice thing, doesn't it? If you don't believe in the direction your leader, your business is going in, then you can make an informed choice. Nobody wants to work in a business or for a leader that they don't trust. So again, it comes back to that choice and decision making as far as I can see.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, because when you talk about trust, everyone sort of needs it. We probably underestimate how much we want trust with regards to the purchases we make, the people that we hang around, and it's the same in the workplace. It's that one of those invisible things that we feel that can't really measure. A bit like motivation. Unless you've got motivation amount, you don't really know what motivates you. It's one of those things that you can, you feel it, but you can't really put a measure on it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and again, kind of using another analogy. Very often when we're teaching trust, we use the analogy of water. Water sustains life. Without it, everything withers and dies. Trust is exactly the same thing. Without it sucks the lifeblood out of the team, out of an organization, such that relationships fail, projects go off the rails, and ultimately organizations almost wither and die. I remember years ago, there's a great, I can't remember the quote word for word, but in essence, the founder of eBay said that he finds it astounding that millions of people around the world will actually trust another person enough to pay them money for something that is going eventually to be sent to them. Now, we could argue, oh yes, but there's a backup, and there are processes in place. But ultimately, it comes down to trust, doesn't it? You are trusting that if I buy a second-hand lawnmower from you are going to your bargain and send it to me. I've never met you. I'm probably never likely to meet you. But yeah, again, that trust is sort of inherent in that relationship, isn't it?
It's amazing how much that like trust comes up. When you go through that process. You get to know someone, and then you get to like them, and then that's where the trust comes from. But that has to be so quick. From you want that thing. Do I trust that person? Am I actually going to get that thing? Is it going to actually arrive? And you have to make that judgment, don't you? And there's lots of things that go through, like subconsciously. Do I like the picture? Are they communicating in the way that I like? All these things that are going on, you're not really measuring them, but again, you're feeling it, aren't you? And it's it's like marketing. I mean, there's another. You could have go on a tangent here and start talking about marketing with regards to trust, but it is that thing. It's really something that you feel, and why you buy into brands and all those sort of things. Trust comes into that, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I think it's also about behaviours as well. There are certain behaviours that would suggest somebody who is trustworthy. Are you demonstrating respect for another person? Are you talking straight to them? Are you being really transparent? Are you holding yourself accountable? Are you learning lessons when something has gone wrong? So I think there are all kinds of things that we can do, but ultimately, I think it does ultimately come down to that willingness. Are you willing to extend trust to someone else, and are you giving somebody a person that they can trust? Are you yourself trustworthy?
Brilliant. And sadly, Jane, our time's running out, so we need to sort of wrap things up rather than carry on all day long about this. I'm sure we could. There'd be some reason, and we'd go off all sorts of tangents. But just before you leave us, Jane, what would you say then with regards to trust issues that we might not have covered already? Is there anything that people should always remember when it comes to trust?
I think it's always going back to looking at yourself and asking yourself the question, am I giving somebody a trustworthy person? Am I showing up in the way that, that I would expect to trust someone else?
Brilliant. Great. Well, thanks for your time today. It's been brilliant. I really enjoyed it. Some great insights on a personal level, and with regards to the analogies that you've shared as well. They've been brilliant, and I'm definitely going to be nicking one or two of those going forward. So great. Thank you again for coming on, and I hope you have a great day, and we'll catch up again soon.
Lovely. Thank you for having me, Mark. Been really good to chat to you. Thank you.
Well, that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Hope you did like I did. One thing that I enjoy about these shows is that you can always learn from other people, even if they're doing something similar to you. There's those analogies that come out of these conversations, which I love. And we're all learning, aren't we? We're always learning as we go along. And bearing that in mind, that if you stop learning, then you start dying, as they say. So hopefully you got as much from that episode as I did. Please leave your comments and all those things that shows that you show your love. That'd be great. Wherever you're watching this on replay, really appreciate any feedback. Thank you for those that have joined us, especially Claire on this episode with your comments. Glad you enjoyed the content. And so with regards to where you can find us, check out Jane at the weareextraordinary.co.uk. I think it is. I'll put the link into the comments so you can find Jane. And with regards to me, the reluctantleader.academy, and feel free to link in with me. And for now, I will bid you farewell. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you all very shortly on the next episode of the Get Savvy Show.